The night was still, but my heart was restless. Something in the air felt off, like the calm before a storm. I had just finished washing the dishes when I heard voices upstairs, faint at first, but enough to pull me toward the staircase. My knees ached with every step, but curiosity, or maybe fear, kept me moving. The clock on the wall struck 10. My son, Michael, and his wife, Vanessa, were supposed to be asleep by now, but their voices were sharp, low, and full of secrets. I crept closer, each creak of the wooden floor making my heart race faster. Then, through the half-closed door of Michael's room, I heard the words that froze my blood. "Once she's gone, the house is ours," Michael said. There was a pause. Vanessa's voice followed, dripping with greed. "You mean once she dies?" "That could take years, Michael. We can't keep waiting like this." The world went silent around me. My breath caught in my throat. My own son, the boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed my dreams for, was talking about my death like it was a business plan. I gripped the doorframe, feeling the weight of every year I had lived pressing down on me. Michael sighed. "She's old, Vanessa. It won't be long, and when it happens, we'll sell this house, move to the city, start fresh." Vanessa laughed softly, a cold, hollow sound that made my stomach turn. "And what about the will? What if she leaves it to that charity she loves so much?" Michael's voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't worry. She trusts me. I've already been helping her with the paperwork. Once she signs the version I prepared, everything will go through me." The room spun. My son, the one I taught to write his name, to tie his shoes, to say thank you, had forged a plan against me. My vision blurred. I wanted to burst in, scream, demand answers, but I didn't. I stepped back quietly, trembling, clutching my chest as I tried to breathe. Downstairs, I collapsed into the armchair, my fingers trembling as I replayed their words. "Once she's gone. Gone. Not dead. Gone." But they meant the same thing. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I remembered the nights I stayed awake sewing his clothes, the days I skipped meals so he could eat, the time I sold my wedding necklace to help him start his business, and this was my reward. Betrayal from my own flesh and blood. The grandfather clock ticked loudly, echoing in the empty room. Each tick felt like a countdown to something inevitable. I thought about Robert, my late husband. If he were here, he would have protected me. He always said, "Maggie, people change when money's involved. Keep your head clear and your papers clearer." That memory sparked something in me. I wiped my tears. The sadness hardened into resolve. If my son could plan behind my back, then he had forgotten who raised him. He didn't know that long before he started plotting, I had already taken steps to protect everything. I stood up, walked to my bedroom, and opened the old wooden drawer. Beneath the photo albums and old letters lay a sealed envelope, the one I'd given to my lawyer, Eleanor, a year ago. The updated will. It was the night Robert's words came true. I had felt a strange intuition back then, something telling me to make a change. So I did, and tonight I finally understood why, but instead I just whispered, "We'll see, Michael. We'll see." That night I couldn't sleep. The wind rattled the windows, and the memories rattled my heart. I walked around the house, touching the photo frames, the old armchair, the quilt I made when Michael was 5. Every inch of this home had my life stitched into it. And yet, somehow, it felt like I was already being erased. Have you ever felt unwanted in your own family? Tap that so I know I'm not alone. The next morning, I saw Michael's car in the driveway, early, before sunrise. But he wasn't knocking on my door. He was sitting inside his car, talking on the phone. His voice was low, serious, Something inside me, the same instinct that once woke me at 2 a.m. when he had a fever, told me to listen. So I pulled my sweater tight and stepped quietly onto the porch. The air was cold and sharp, and then I heard him say it. "Yeah, the realtor said we'll get a good price. She'll never know until we finalize it." I froze. Realtor? She'll never know. My heart stuttered like an old clock losing its rhythm. He hung up quickly and started the car. When he drove away, I was still standing there in my slippers, my breath turning white in the morning air. All day I tried to convince myself I'd misunderstood, that maybe he meant something else, that maybe love just sounded different now, but I couldn't shake the tremor in my chest. So that night, when he said he had a late meeting, I followed him, quietly, carefully, the way a mother learns to follow her child without being seen. He didn't go to any office. He drove to a house, not mine, not his, a place I'd never seen before. Small, with lights on inside. I parked at the corner and waited. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from something deeper, something that felt like betrayal wearing a familiar face. Through the window, I saw him step inside. He hugged someone, a woman, but it wasn't his wife. I covered my mouth before the sound could escape me, because I didn't know whether it was a gasp or a cry. The minutes stretched long. I watched as they sat close, talking quietly, laughing even, and suddenly the pieces fit. The realtor, the plans, the urgency. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about money, my house, the one his father built with his hands before he passed, the one Michael grew up in, the one I thought would always be home. When he finally left, I stayed a long time in the car, watching that house. My breath fogged up the window, and my heart felt heavier than ever before. Sometimes silence hurts more than words. Comment true if you've ever felt that pain. The next morning, he came to visit again, this time with flowers. "Morning, Mom," he said cheerfully, like nothing was wrong. He placed the bouquet on the table, sunflowers my favorite, and smiled that same boyish smile that used to melt me. "Michael," I said softly, "where were you last night?" He froze just a second too long. "Work dinner," he said. I nodded, pretending to believe him. "You're working so hard these days. I'm proud of you." His shoulders relaxed. He didn't notice that my hands were shaking again, not from age this time, but from anger held too quietly. Later, I sat in my bedroom, holding the old photo album on my lap. There he was, first day of school, missing a front tooth, holding my hand. I brushed my fingers over the photo. "How did we get here, my boy?" I whispered. "How did love turn into this?" That evening, I made him dinner. His favorite, pot roast, mashed potatoes, and the chocolate pie his father used to love. We sat together, just like old times. He talked about work, about new opportunities, about maybe moving soon. I smiled and listened, because mothers always listen, even when they already know the truth. At one point, he looked at me and said gently, "Mom, you trust me, right?" And for a moment, I saw the little boy again, the one who used to clutch my hand at the fair. I smiled. "Of course I do, sweetheart." But inside, I felt the truth breaking like glass. After dinner, he kissed my forehead. "Don't stay up too late," he said, and he left. But I didn't go to bed. I went to his car, and inside, on the passenger seat, was a folder. It had my name on it. I opened it, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Inside were papers, contracts, deed transfer forms, and at the bottom, A note written in his handwriting. Once Mom moves into Rosewood, we can finalize the sale immediately. Rosewood. That was the home he mentioned, the place where he wanted to send me, while he sold the only home I'd ever known. The tears came slowly, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, like rain that falls even when the sky looks clear. I sat there, holding those papers, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly invisible. Not old, not tired, just unseen. Grandmas deserve love, not loneliness. Share this if you agree. When he came back the next day, I didn't say a word. I made tea. I smiled. I listened. But in my mind, something shifted. I realized I couldn't just sit quietly anymore. I'd been many things in my life. A wife, a mother, a caretaker. Now it was time to be something else. Strong. Still. But grief, I learned, doesn't always soften people. Sometimes it hardens them. It was 2 years later that he met Vanessa, beautiful, sharp, and cold. She worked in real estate, always talking about property values, market trends, and potential profits. The first time she visited, she looked around my home and said, "This place could sell for a fortune if renovated." It wasn't admiration, it was calculation. The manipulation begins. When they married, things changed quickly. They convinced me to move into the guest room downstairs for comfort. They started managing the bills, the maintenance, the repairs. At first, I was grateful. My knees were bad, my eyesight fading. But slowly, I noticed the small things. My mail being opened before I got to it, bank calls going unanswered, my voice being ignored in family discussions. Then one day, I found my name missing from a bank account I'd opened with Robert decades ago. Michael brushed it off. "It's just easier for tax purposes, Mum." "Don't worry about it," I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him, because admitting my own son could betray me felt unbearable. Helen, the neighbor who saw too much. Across the street lived Helen Parker, my best friend and confidant, a widow like me, sharp as ever despite her age. She was the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgot nothing. She came over that morning for tea, as she often did. Her bright red cardigan and keen eyes were a welcome comfort. "You look pale, Maggie," she said, setting her teacup down. "Something wrong?" I hesitated. Could I tell her what I'd overheard? Would she even believe me? I heard something last night. Michael and Vanessa. Helen didn't blink. "Let me guess. Money trouble?" "Worse," I whispered. "They want me. Gone." Her face hardened instantly. "Gone?" He said, "Once she's gone, the house is ours." For a moment, Helen said nothing. Then she reached across the table, taking my trembling hand. "Oh, Maggie, I always knew that woman was poison. But Michael? Your own boy?" I nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I've already spoken to Eleanor," I said softly. "My will's been changed for a year now. Everything goes to Clare House Foundation, the charity Robert and I supported. They'll never see a penny." Helen's lips curved into a grim smile. "Good. Let them choke on their own greed." But her tone turned serious. The rain had started early that morning. Thin, steady, like the sky was weeping quietly for me. I sat by the window, the same seat I'd always taken with my morning tea, and watched the droplets race down the glass. My hands were still trembling, not from age, but from everything that had happened. Michael's voice still echoed in my head. "She'll never know until we finalize it." Those words, once just a whisper, had changed everything. Back then, our house was full of life. Michael was 17, tall, awkward, full of dreams. He'd come home late from football practice, his shoes muddy, his laughter echoing through the hallway. His father, John, would sit in his recliner, pretending to read the newspaper but secretly waiting to ask, "How'd the game go, champ?" And me? I'd be in the kitchen, stirring the pot roast, humming along to the radio. Our home smelled of cinnamon and soap and love. We didn't have much. John worked double shifts at the factory, and I took small sewing jobs to make ends meet. But every night we ate together. Every night we said grace. Michael used to hold my hand at the table. "One day, I'll buy you the biggest house in town, Mum," he'd say, grinning through a mouthful of mashed potatoes. And John would laugh. "Just make sure it's got a big porch for her rocking chair." Simple words, but they became promises I believed in. After John passed, suddenly, without warning, everything changed. Michael was 23, too young to lose a father, too old to fall apart. But he did. In his own quiet way, he stopped visiting home as often. He said it was too painful. I understood, or at least, I told myself I did. Years went by. He got married. Linda came into our lives, polite, pretty, practical. At first she tried, she really did. She brought me flowers, asked about my health, helped around the kitchen. But as time passed, her visits became shorter, her smiles thinner. Her eyes started to wander to the corners of my old house. The antique clock, the oak cabinet, the silver tea set, not with admiration, but with calculation. I noticed, but I said nothing, because mothers learn to keep peace, even when they can feel a storm coming. Yesterday, my neighbor Mrs. Turner came by. She's 76, full of stories and arthritis, but her spirit could outshine the sun. She knocked twice, then let herself in, because she knows I forget the door sometimes. "Margaret," she said, hanging up her dripping umbrella, "you look like you've seen a ghost." I smiled faintly. "Maybe I have, dear." "The ghost of trust," she frowned. "You're still worrying about Michael, aren't you?" I hesitated. "He's been different lately. He's planning things." Behind my back, Mrs. Turner reached over and patted my hand. "You know how these children are now. Everything's about convenience. They forget the years we spent holding everything together for them." Her words settled deep in me, like old dust finding its way into cracks. If you've ever given everything to your family and still felt invisible, tap so I know you exist. Later that afternoon, I sat with my old photo albums spread across the table. The house smelled like lemon polish and memories, page after page. Michael's first steps, his graduation, his wedding. So many smiles, so much pride. And then I found a picture I hadn't seen in years. Michael, maybe 10 years old, standing in front of our house, holding a sign that said, "This is home." He'd drawn a crooked heart over the roof. Home. Now he wanted to sell it. And the cruelest part, he thought I'd never find out. That night, I dreamed of John. He was standing in the hallway, just as he used to, his work jacket over his arm. "Don't let them take it, Maggie," he said softly. "This house, it's us." When I woke, the room was cold, but his words still burned in the air. After John died, I worked wherever I could, mending dresses, babysitting, cleaning houses. Every penny went into keeping the mortgage paid, the lights on, and Michael's college dream alive. There were nights when I went to bed hungry, so he wouldn't have to. Nights I stitched until my fingers bled. And mornings I'd leave before sunrise, whispering a prayer that the world would be kind to him. He never knew most of it. I didn't want him to, because a mother's love isn't meant to be counted. It's meant to be given. Sometimes the ones we love most are the ones who break us. Comment true if you understand that pain. Now, as I looked at the folder he'd left in his car, the one with my name, the deed, and those cold, sharp signatures, I realized something darker. This wasn't just greed, it was desperation. But why? Why would my son, my kind, gentle boy, risk everything for money? The next day I called his office. A woman answered. "Oh, Michael. He hasn't worked here for over 3 months." My heart stopped. 3 months? Yes, ma'am. He was let go in July. That was when he started visiting more often. When he started asking about my finances, my health, my home. I thanked her and hung up, my hand shaking as I placed the phone down. He'd been lying to me for months. The job, the meetings, the late nights. And suddenly it made sense. The calls, the secret woman, the urgency. That evening, as I was locking the back door, I heard a voice from across the fence. "Mrs. Collins." It was Ethan, the boy from next door. 17, kind-hearted, always offering to mow my lawn or carry groceries. He reminded me so much of Michael at that age. It hurt to look at him sometimes. He climbed halfway up the fence. "You dropped this yesterday," he said, holding out a small keychain. "My husband's old army tag." "Oh, thank you, sweetheart," I said, taking it gently. He hesitated. Mrs. Collins, I saw your son here last night. He was in the backyard. I think he was looking for something." My chest tightened. "Looking for what?" Ethan shrugged. "I don't know." He was near the shed. When he saw me, he pretended to be on the phone. Near the shed. That was where John and I kept the lockbox, the one with the original house documents. And I had moved them. Just 2 nights before. The next morning, I went out to the shed. The lock was broken. The shelves were disturbed. Someone had been inside. I stood there for a long time, the cold air biting my face, and whispered, "Michael, what have you done? Have you ever cried alone so no one could see? Just hit like." "I'll understand." Later that day, I called Linda. Her tone was as crisp as ever. "Linda, dear," I began. "I was wondering, how's Michael been? He seems stressed lately." There was a pause. "He's fine," she said quickly. "Just busy. Busy with work." Another pause. Longer this time. "Yes, of course." But her voice cracked just slightly at the end. It was enough. I'd been a mother long enough to hear lies dressed as concern. That night, I sat in the dark living room, the only light coming from the small lamp by the couch. On the coffee table were the papers from his car, and beside them, the house key. I traced its edges slowly, remembering every door it ever opened. The door to Michael's childhood room. The door John painted blue when we couldn't afford a new one. The door that had always been home. Now that same key was the reason I couldn't sleep. Because I knew what he wanted. But I didn't yet know why. And that question, that was heavier than anything. I started writing letters, not to him, but to myself. Old habit, something I used to do when I missed John. Words I couldn't... "Dear Michael," I wrote one night, "I used to think love was unconditional. That no matter how far you drifted, it would always find you. But maybe love has limits, not of feeling, but of what it can forgive." I folded the letter, tucked it under my pillow, and turned off the lamp. But sleep never came. 2 days later, Mrs. Turner knocked again. She brought her famous apple pie, the kind that smells like childhood. "Eat," she said firmly, "and stop worrying." I smiled weakly. "I wish it were that simple." She sighed. "You know, I saw Michael's car last night, parked near the old post office. He wasn't alone. My spoon froze midway. "Did you see who with?" She nodded. "A woman. Pretty. Younger. They looked serious." My heart sank. Same woman from before. The one I'd seen through the window. So it wasn't just business. It was something more. I decided to follow again. That night, I waited until his car left the driveway of his own home. Then I followed, just like before. Headlights off, heart pounding, prayers whispering through my lips. He stopped at the same small house. I parked a block away and crept closer, umbrella in hand, the rain hiding my footsteps. Through the half-drawn curtains, I saw them again. Michael and that woman. They were talking, papers on the table, money in an envelope. Then I saw her hand something to him. A small USB drive. He nodded, put it in his jacket, and left. When he drove away, I followed him not home, but to the bank. He went inside for nearly 20 minutes, and when he came out, he was smiling. I parked across the street and waited until he was gone. Then I went in. The clerk recognized me instantly. "Oh, Mrs. Collins. How are you? Your son was just here, transferring some funds." My pulse raced. Transferring? From what account? She checked the screen. From the joint account ending in 1432. That was my account. The one I'd opened after John's death. The one I never gave Michael access to. Unless he'd found the documents in the shed. I thanked her, forced a smile, and walked out into the rain. It felt colder than ever. Somewhere between heartbreak and disbelief, I realized this wasn't just about selling my house. He was taking everything, every dollar I'd saved, every piece of security I had left, every piece of the life I built from nothing. And the worst part, he didn't even look guilty. I got home and sat on the couch for a long time. The ticking clock filled the silence like an unwanted companion. And then I remembered something. The envelope I'd seen on his table. The woman. The USB. The money. There was more to this story. Much more. No mother deserves to be forgotten. Share this if you still believe love is stronger than greed. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, a soft knock came at the door. When I opened it, Ethan was standing there again, wet, out of breath, holding something in his hand. "Mrs. Collins," he whispered, "I found this near your fence. I think your son dropped it." It was a small flash drive, silver, unmarked. I froze. "You're sure?" He nodded. "I saw him there about an hour ago. He looked like he was searching for something." My heart thudded. I thanked him, closed the door, and stared at the flash drive in my palm. I walked to the old computer in my study, the one Michael had set up for me years ago. I plugged it in. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a single folder appeared. Rosewood Project files. I clicked it open. Inside were scanned documents, bank statements, property listings, emails, and then photos of me, of my house, of my yard. Each file was labeled with dates and notes, and one of them, made my stomach drop. Target confirmation. Margaret Collins must vacate before November 15th. I scrolled further, my breath coming faster. Attached beneath that note was an email chain. Between Michael and a name I didn't recognize. The woman. "Once she's moved, we liquidate the property. You'll get your share." My eyes filled with tears I didn't even feel fall. I sank back into the chair, the screen's glow flickering over my face. Every memory, every smile, every bedtime story I'd ever told him, all twisted into something cruel. And as I sat there, alone in that dark room, one thought echoed in my heart like thunder. He wasn't just selling my house. He was selling me. I closed the laptop and whispered into the quiet, "John, I think I finally understand your warning." I wiped my tears, straightened my shoulders, and whispered again, "He may have forgotten who raised him, but I haven't forgotten who I am." I placed the flash drive inside a small envelope, wrote a name on it, and tomorrow morning, I would take it somewhere Michael would never expect. But for now, I let the rain keep falling, steady and relentless, just like the truth that was about to break open. Sometimes silence hides the loudest pain, and sometimes it's the calm before a storm. If you'd stand by me when the truth comes out, tap so I know I'm not alone. The morning came cold and pale. I didn't sleep a second. The flash drive lay on the table like a confession no one wanted to hear. I sat there in my robe, the old lace one John gave me, and waited for the clock to reach 9, because at 9 o'clock sharp, I had an appointment with my lawyer. The office smelled of paper and coffee, and something else, truth, the kind that hurts when it comes out. "Mrs. Collins," Mr. Harris said, adjusting his glasses, "you said it was urgent?" I handed him the flash drive. "My son's been planning to sell my home, behind my back, and maybe more than that." He looked surprised, but calm. "Do you have proof?" "Yes," I whispered, pushing the envelope toward him. "Everything's in here, his emails, his plans. He thinks I signed the house over, but I never did." Mr. Harris nodded slowly. "Good. That means he can't legally proceed, but—" He hesitated. "Mrs. Collins, are you prepared for what this could mean? Bringing this out could break your family apart." I smiled sadly. "It already is." He read quietly for several minutes. The sound of clicking keys filled the silence. Then he leaned back and exhaled sharply. "This is serious." "He's been working with an investor. Looks like her name is Rebecca Lane. She's buying the property through a shell company. And half the profits are going to your son." I swallowed hard. "Half?" He nodded. "Yes, but there's more. He's also been moving money from your joint account to an offshore one under her name. You could press charges against my son, the boy I raised with calloused hands and soft prayers." I looked down at my lap. "I don't want revenge, Mr. Harris. I just want the truth seen." He nodded gently. "Then let's make sure it is." That evening, Michael called. His voice was cheerful. Too cheerful. "Hey, Mom. We're all having dinner at our place tomorrow. Linda's making lasagna. You should come." "Of course, honey," I said quietly. "I'd love to." He paused for a second, as if trying to sense something in my tone. "Great. It'll be nice to have you over. Feels like it's been ages. It had been only a week, but years of trust had already aged between us." Linda greeted me at the door. "Oh, Margaret, so glad you could make it." Her voice was sweet, but stretched, like sugar pulled too thin. The dining room was bright, almost Michael's too bright. Smile felt forced. Even their daughter, little Lily, seemed unusually quiet at the table. As we ate, I watched him, the way his hand fidgeted with his fork, the way his eyes avoided mine, the way guilt sat on his shoulders like an invisible weight. "Mom," he said after a while, "I wanted to ask if you've given any more thought to moving into Rosewood. It's really nice there." I took a small sip of water before answering. "I have, actually." His eyes lit up. "Really? That's great, Mom. I'll help with everything." Linda smiled tightly. "You'll love it there. It's peaceful, and they handle all your needs." I nodded slowly. "Yes, I bet they do." The silence stretched a little too long. Even the music felt awkward. Then I said softly, "Michael, dear, Do you remember the blue door your father painted for the house? He blinked. What? The one you and he spent a whole weekend fixing when you were 12. You got paint on your nose. He smiled faintly, confused. Yeah, sure, why? I set down my fork carefully. Because that's the door you're trying to sell. He froze. Linda's fork clattered against her plate. Mom, what are you talking about? I looked directly at him. Don't lie to me, Michael. I know about the realtor, about the bank transfers, about Rebecca Lane. His face went pale. How do you know that name? I followed you, I said simply. Twice. The room fell silent. Even little Lily stopped eating. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of everyone's hearts breaking quietly at once. Mom, he said finally, voice low, I was going to tell you. When? I interrupted softly. After you sold my home. After you drained my account. He looked around helplessly. It's not what you think. Linda spoke up then, sharp, defensive. You don't understand, Margaret. We're drowning in debt. Michael lost his job. We had no choice. I turned to her. My voice stayed calm. No choice but to betray your own mother. She lowered her gaze, silent. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it was temporary. Rebecca said it was just a deal. Quick cash, short term, and you believed her. I whispered. He didn't answer. I gave you everything, Michael. Every sacrifice your father and I made. For you. We went without heat some winters, so you could go to college. I sold my wedding ring to pay your tuition. And now? This? He looked up, tears in his eyes. Mum, please. Have you ever spoken the truth and still been blamed? Tap, if that pain feels familiar. Then I reached into my purse and placed the small envelope on the table. This is what you wanted, isn't it? He frowned, confused. What's that? Your real plan. Everything. The emails, the transfers, the contract. Rebecca's name. Your signature. Linda gasped softly. How did you get that? I looked at her calmly. You dropped it by my fence. Michael stared at me, horror creeping into his face. Mum, you don't understand. I cut him off gently. No, my son. I finally do. He stood suddenly, knocking his chair back. You can't use that. It's private. I rose too, slowly, with the dignity of someone who's survived much worse than betrayal. Private? You made my life public the moment you put my name on those papers without asking. His breathing quickened. You're ruining everything. I shook my head. No, Michael. You did that yourself. Then unexpectedly, a small voice broke the quiet. Daddy? We all turned. Lily stood near the hallway, her eyes wide, tears pooling. Daddy, why are you yelling at Grandma? Michael froze, his face crumpled. Sweetheart, it's complicated. She shook her head. Grandma's nice. You said she's old but kind. His voice faltered. I know. She turned to me. Grandma, are you mad at Daddy? I knelt slowly, my knees trembling. No, my love. I'm just sad. Because sometimes grown-ups forget what love really means. She hugged me tightly. And in that moment, everything inside me broke and healed all at once. Linda stood abruptly. Michael, I told you this would happen. I said she'd find out. He glared at her. You were part of this too. Because you begged me, she snapped. You said she'd never know. You said it was just business. Their voices rose, overlapping, panic, fear, guilt. And I just stood there, calm in the storm they created, because I had already lost them long before this dinner. When family turns against you, the silence hurts more than the words. Comment true if you've lived this. Then the doorbell rang. 3 soft chimes. Michael looked confused. Who's that? I straightened my shoulders. That would be Mr. Harris. The door opened, and my lawyer stepped in, holding a small briefcase. I'm sorry to intrude, he said politely, but Mrs. Collins asked me to deliver something in person. Michael's eyes widened. What are you doing here? Mr. Harris opened the briefcase and placed a set of documents on the table. These are the official records, proving that Mrs. Collins never signed over her property. She remains the sole legal owner. Additionally, all transactions from her account have been traced. Linda backed away, pale. Oh my God. And, Mr. Harris added, glancing at Michael, we've submitted these findings to the authorities. They'll determine whether further action is required. Michael's voice cracked. You called the police? I looked at him softly. No, Michael. He did, because I couldn't bring myself to. He stared at me. Not angry now, just empty. The way a child looks when he finally realizes the consequences of his own choices. Mom? He whispered, tears streaking his face. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to fix things. I thought if I could sell it fast, I could pay off the debts. I didn't want to tell you because you knew it would break me, I finished. He nodded, his shoulders shaking. I took a long breath, then said quietly, you could have told me the truth. I would have helped you. Even after everything, I always would. He sobbed softly. I'm sorry. I placed my trembling hand on his cheek. I know, sweetheart. But sorry doesn't build back trust, Linda spoke then, voice small. We'll fix it. We'll make it right. I looked at her, eyes tired but calm. You can start by remembering that love isn't a transaction. There was nothing left to say, just silence, thick, fragile, human. Mr. Harris cleared his throat gently. Mrs. Collins, I'll step outside to give you privacy. When he left, the rain outside grew heavier. Michael sat at the table, head in his hands. Linda stood behind him, crying quietly. And I walked toward the window, the one overlooking their garden lights. The glass was cold under my fingertips. Outside, the rain blurred everything. The world, the past, the pain. I turned and said softly, tomorrow, the truth will be public. And maybe then, you'll understand what it means to lose something you can't buy back. Michael looked up slowly. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. I gave Mr. Harris permission to release one last thing, your father's will. He blinked. Dad's will. That was years ago, I nodded. Yes, and there's something you never knew. He left a clause, one that only activates if this house was ever sold without both our consent. Michael frowned. What clause? I met his eyes, steady, unwavering. It transfers everything to charity. He went pale. Linda gasped audibly. Lily stared in confusion. Michael's lips parted, but no words came out. He just sank into his chair, defeated. I whispered, more to myself than to him. John always said, love can't live where greed takes root. I guess he was right. Sometimes all you have left is your dignity. Share this if you'd still choose respect over riches. I walked to the door, picked up my coat, and turned one last time. Michael looked at me, not with anger, but shame. Mum, he said softly, please, don't go. I smiled sadly. I'm not leaving, son. I'm just letting you find your own way home. And with that, I stepped out into the rain. Outside, the world felt lighter. Or maybe I did. For the first time in years, I felt my heart breathe again. I looked up at the sky, raindrops running down my face like cleansing tears, and whispered, "John, it's done." But as I turned toward the car, something caught my eye. A figure standing near the fence, a woman holding an umbrella, Rebecca Lane. She smiled faintly. "You think it's over, Mrs. Collins?" I stopped. "It's enough for now." Her smile widened. "Not yet." "Your son wasn't the only one who wanted that house." Before I could speak, she walked away into the rain, vanishing like smoke. And I stood there, the truth pressing heavy on my chest, because I suddenly realized the plan went deeper than Michael, and I had only uncovered half of it. If this moment made your heart ache, please like this, for every mother who was never heard. The air was thick, heavy with whispers, guilt, and curiosity. I sat quietly on the wooden bench, my hands folded on my lap. The veins in them looked like maps, roads of love, loss, and labor. Across the aisle sat Michael and Linda. He looked smaller than I remembered, his tie slightly askew, his eyes hollow. Beside him, Rebecca Lane adjusted her blazer, every movement sharp, rehearsed. The judge entered. Everyone rose. My knees trembled slightly, but I stood tall, because this wasn't just about a house. It was about my dignity and my husband's memory. Mr. Harris stood, calm, professional, composed. "Your Honor, this case concerns the unauthorized attempt to sell the property of Mrs. Margaret Collins by her son, Michael Collins, under false pretenses. Pretenses and forged consent." Gasps fluttered through the small courtroom. Michael's jaw tightened. Mr. Harris continued, "We will demonstrate through financial records, communications, and witness testimony that this sale was both deceptive and intended for personal profit. Not for the care of Mrs. Collins, as the defendant claims." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Michael's lawyer rose, younger, nervous. "Your Honor, my client was motivated not by greed, but desperation. He believed his mother's health and safety required assisted living, and he sought to manage her estate responsibly." The words sounded neat, polished, but lies, even well-spoken, have a stench truth can't hide. I remembered the nights I'd stayed up sewing to buy him shoes. The winters, John and I had split one blanket, so Michael could sleep warm. And now, this same boy was defending a theft of everything we built. Mr. Harris called his first witness, the bank officer. She confirmed the transfers from my account to a foreign one under Rebecca Lane's name. Every number echoed like a heartbeat in the courtroom. $5,000, $8,200, $12,400. Each figure felt like a betrayal counted in dollars. Then he played the recordings. Michael's voice, muffled but clear. "Once she signs, we'll move fast. The buyer's ready. Mom won't know until it's done." The room fell silent. Even the judge's pen paused midair. Linda buried her face in her hands. Rebecca's jaw clenched, her eyes darting toward Michael in anger. "Your Honor," Mr. Harris said softly, "this is the voice of a son who forgot what family means." When it was my turn to speak, I stood slowly. My heart thudded, but my voice was steady. "I'm not here for revenge," I began. "I'm here because truth matters. My husband and I worked our whole lives for that home. We built every corner with love, not money. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and I trusted my son with it." Michael looked up, eyes red. "I didn't want him punished," I continued softly. "I just wanted him to remember who he was." The judge nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Mrs. Collins." When Michael was called to testify, his hands shook. He glanced at me before sitting down. "Mr. Collins," the judge said, "did you knowingly attempt to sell your mother's property without her legal consent?" He hesitated. I thought she'd be safer in assisted living." "Answer the question," the judge pressed. He swallowed hard. "Yes." Gasps spread across the room like wind. Rebecca's head snapped toward him, furious. "Michael," she hissed under her breath. He continued, voice breaking. "She found out." And I panicked. I didn't mean to hurt her. I just thought it was the only way. The judge leaned forward. "And the money you transferred to Miss Lane's account?" His silence spoke volumes. Rebecca stood abruptly. "That was a loan." The judge shot her a look. "You'll have your turn, Miss Lane." Then Mr. Harris approached, with a calm voice that cut like glass. "Mr. Collins, you said you wanted your mother cared for. Then why did you tell Ms. Lane in your message that you'd finally get your hands on the old place?" Michael looked shattered. "I was angry. She wouldn't listen." I whispered softly, almost to myself. "I listened all my life. They thought she was weak." She showed them what real strength looks like. Mr. Harris turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we request permission to submit one final piece of evidence. Mrs. Collins's late husband's original will." Rebecca visibly stiffened. Michael frowned in confusion. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Mr. Harris handed the judge a document, yellowed, edges soft with time. "This clause," he explained, "states that in the event the Collins home is sold without the consent of both parties, all assets are to be donated to charity, specifically to the St. Mary's Children's Fund." The judge read it aloud. The words echoed through the courtroom like thunder rolling down a hill. Rebecca's face drained of color. Michael closed his eyes, whispering, "Oh, God." The audience murmured, soft gasps, a few clucks of pity, others of disgust. One woman whispered behind me, "How could a son do that to his own mother?" The judge's voice finally broke the silence. "Mr. Collins, Ms. Lane, your actions show deliberate deceit. The court orders all accounts frozen and funds returned. The property will remain in Mrs. Collins's name until her passing, after which it will transfer per the will to charity. You will both face formal investigation for fraud." Michael lowered his head, tears dripping onto the table. Rebecca stood abruptly, her heels clicking sharply. "This is ridiculous. He promised me." The judge's gavel struck. Enough. In that silence, truth filled every corner of the room, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. If seeing truth win gives you hope, tap symbol of heart so more people see this. Outside the courthouse, the sky was gray, not stormy, just heavy. Reporters murmured quietly. Neighbors stared. Some offered me small smiles, others sympathetic nods. Michael followed me out, his steps slow. "Mom?" I didn't turn. He came closer. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked, like a boy's again. "I never wanted it to end like this." I turned then, slowly. My eyes met his, and for a moment, I saw the child he once was. The boy who used to bring me dandelions and say, "For you, Mommy." But that boy was gone, and what stood before me was a man who traded love for desperation. "I forgive you," I said softly. "But forgiveness doesn't erase what's been done." He nodded, tears streaming. "I know." "Go home, Michael," I whispered. "You have to live with the truth now." Linda approached then, her face pale and streaked with mascara. "Margaret." I didn't stop him. "That's my sin." I looked at her gently. "Then start by teaching Lily what honesty means. Don't let her grow up believing love is something you buy." Linda nodded, sobbing quietly. Sometimes justice takes time, but it always comes. Comment, true, if you believe that. That night, I sat alone in my living room. The fire crackled softly. On the mantel stood our wedding photo, John smiling, holding my hand. I whispered, "We did it, John. The house is safe." But even as I said it, my chest ached. Because victory can feel lonely when the battle costs love. I looked at the chair where Michael used to sit, legs swinging as a boy. I could still hear his laugh in the walls. Was it worth it? Was justice worth losing the only family I had left? I reached for my cup of tea, my hands trembling slightly. Outside, the rain had stopped. The night was still, too still. And yet, something felt unfinished. A letter sat on the table. No stamp, no return address, just my name, Margaret, in neat handwriting. I opened it slowly. "You may have won today, Mrs. Collins, but you don't know the whole story, Rebecca Lane." My breath caught. I turned the envelope over. Inside, a photo. Rebecca, standing with another man, and behind them, the for sale sign in front of my house, dated 3 months before any of this began. I leaned back in my chair, eyes burning with tired tears. Even in truth, lies still hid in the shadows. Was Rebecca just using Michael? Or was there someone else, someone higher, pulling the strings? I folded the photo back into the envelope and whispered, "Justice was done." But peace still felt far away. For every mother who's been betrayed by her own blood, share this. But can a mother's heart ever truly heal? It's been 2 years since that stormy day in court. The seasons have come and gone, each one leaving its quiet mark. The roses in my garden are fuller now, softer, as if they've forgiven the world before I did. I still live in the same house, the one with the blue door John painted, the one Michael once tried to sell, but now it feels different, lighter, peaceful. The walls don't echo with hurt anymore. They hum with acceptance, and sometimes, late at night, when I make tea for one, I catch myself smiling. Not because I've forgotten the pain, but because I've learned to live beside it. Each morning, I open the curtains and whisper, "Good morning, John." Another day, his photograph still sits on the shelf. The corners yellowed, but the smile eternal. I light a candle beside it and water the peace lily that's somehow still alive after all these years. Maybe we're both stubborn survivors. The neighbors still wave when I walk to the mailbox. The children down the street call me Grandma Maggie. They run up the driveway just to tell me about their school days or show me scraped knees. Sometimes I bake oatmeal cookies and leave them in a tin by the gate. They think I do it for them. But truthfully, it's for me. Their laughter fills the quiet places that used to ache. It reminds me that not all family is born. Some is simply found. If you've ever healed after heartbreak, tap symbol of heart so I know I'm not alone. Michael visits sometimes. Not often, but when he does, he brings Lily. He doesn't say much, just sits across the table, eyes lowered. We talk about the weather, her piano lessons, how fast she's growing. And every now and then, when Lily runs out to the garden, he looks up and whispers, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I smile gently. A mother's heart doesn't stop loving Michael. It just learns when to stay quiet. He nods, eyes glistening with the kind of guilt that no sentence can erase. But there's warmth there now, too, the beginning of forgiveness. Slow, fragile, real. I've found peace in simple things. Morning tea on the porch, reading old letters, watching the rain slide down the window. Every drop feels like time itself, unstoppable, but cleansing. Sometimes I visit the market with Helen, my neighbor. She's younger than me by a decade, but treats me like her sister. We laugh, share recipes, complain about our joints, and gossip softly like teenagers. "Margaret," she says one morning, as we walk past the flower stalls, "you seem lighter these days." "Happier," I smile. "Healing doesn't make the scars disappear, Helen. It just stops them from hurting when you touch them." That afternoon, we sit in my kitchen peeling apples for pie. The sunlight slants through the window, catching the steam from the kettle. "You ever think about seeing your son more?" she asks gently. "Every day," I say. "But I've learned that love can't be forced. You plant the seed, and one day, it finds its way through the soil." Helen nods quietly. We both fall into a silence that feels like prayer. That night, I take out my old journal, the one I kept hidden in the bottom drawer. The pages smell like lavender and thyme. I flip through the memories, some painful, some sweet. A photograph falls out. It's of Michael as a boy, missing 2 front teeth, holding a wooden airplane his father made. Underneath it, in my own faded handwriting, "For my son. May you always fly with love, not greed." I trace the words with my fingertips. People often ask me why I didn't let anger win, why I didn't cut him out of my life completely. The truth? Because I didn't want to teach my granddaughter that bitterness is the only way to survive betrayal. Forgiveness isn't approval, it's freedom. Comment strong if you've ever had to stand alone and rebuild. A knock at the door one afternoon surprises me. It's Michael, alone this time. He looks older, not just in age but in spirit. He holds a small box. "I found this in Dad's old shed," he says quietly. I open it. Inside are tiny things: a faded blueprint of the house, John's old pocket watch, and a single folded letter. "For you, Margaret," it says in John's handwriting. I haven't seen his writing in decades. My hands tremble as I unfold the paper. "If the world ever tries to take what's ours, remember, home isn't wood or walls, it's heart. And you, my love, are the strongest home I've ever known." My tears fall freely. Michael looks down, ashamed but moved. "I never knew he left you that," he whispers. I smile softly. "I didn't either. Maybe some things wait for the right moment." Michael stays for tea. We talk, truly talk, for the first time in years. He tells me he's been going to therapy, that he's rebuilding his life slowly. "I want to make things right," he says. "You already started," I answer. Before he leaves, he hugs me. Not the stiff, guilty embrace from before, but real, trembling, human. And in that hug, I finally let go of what was left of the pain. Months later, I host a small garden tea for the neighborhood kids. They bring flowers, laughter, and endless chatter. Lily helps me pour lemonade, her hair glinting in the sun. "Grandma," she says shyly, "Daddy told me you're the bravest person he knows." I chuckle softly. Bravery is just another word for staying kind when life isn't. She grins and hugs me. Her small arms around my neck feel like a second chance. Grandmas deserve respect and love. Share this so everyone remembers that. Later that evening, as the children's laughter fades and the sun dips low, I sit in the garden alone. The roses sway gently in the breeze. I close my eyes and listen to the crickets, the rustle of leaves, the soft echo of life continuing. I whisper to the night, "I'm still here, John, and I'm all right." A single petal falls onto my lap, red as memory, soft as forgiveness. If I've learned anything in these years, it's this. The real inheritance we leave behind isn't money or property. It's kindness. It's dignity. It's the way we love when love isn't easy. Greed fades, shame fades, but truth and grace never do. I used to think strength meant never breaking. Now I know it means breaking and rebuilding anyway. If this story touched your heart, like and comment to honor your own journey. As night settles, I close the curtains and sit by the window with a cup of chamomile tea. The moonlight catches the silver in my hair. In the reflection, I see not an old woman, but someone who lived, lost, forgave, and loved deeply. Michael calls once a week now. Sometimes Lily plays her piano over the phone. The notes sound shaky but pure, like hope learning to breathe again. And every time I hear it, I realize maybe that's what healing sounds like. I glance at the photograph of our home. John, young Michael and me, all smiling, the house bright behind us. It's still standing. So am I whisper to myself. Sometimes, even after betrayal, love still finds a way.